Hello, everybody, and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Today you join me, and I'm still kind of looking at the mind matrix of where we are in this realm and self-work. And there's an analogy that came to mind. I was laying there last night awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, like you would, and I was thinking about stuff. Self-work never really finishes, and I was just going over stuff, in the personal. And this analogy came into me, and I started thinking about it, and obviously that didn't help the sleep, but it has produced um, a show, really. And what this was really about was the onion now and the Russian doll. So, here we go. So we have the onion and we have the Russian doll. And as everyone knows, an onion has multiple layers in it. And one of the things that certainly one of the analogies that I use, and it was one of the things that I was given as a an example that I understood early on. I can't remember who told me this, but was our mind is like an onion, and as we get older and older and older, we get extra layers of this onion built up around us. So just like an onion growing in the ground, it starts off very few layers, and as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so you get more and more layers of this onion until you get to the point where you've fundamentally finished your education, the social brainwashing of, the parental brainwashing of, and of course, none of this is intentional necessarily. Obviously, those behind the system, it's intentional. But for those around, those loved ones around us, they have no understanding because they're part of the mechanism of the NK Ultra mind control that's been placed upon them for a long, long time. You know, the indoctrination of these of our family members, those around us in society, their parents were indoctrinated. Their parents were indoctrinated. The parents were indoctrinated, and they were all fed lies and disinformation as a control mechanism to get them or everybody to be subservient to a corrupt and quite sick system. So the onion layer. So when we get to a certain stage, potentially of awakening, or we start questioning the world, and we start to wake up a little bit. And I don't like using these terms really. For me, it was research. I knew something was wrong, so I started researching. So I'll use my language on this one. So as I started researching, I'm looking at stuff thinking, no way, that can't be true. That can't be true. This can't be true. And we get to a stage in the research where cognitive dissonance and Stockholm syndrome slap you in the face. Okay. Now, Stockholm syndrome is supporting and standing up for the abusers and the oppressors of you or the system. Crazy. But we do. If you have a conversation with somebody who's asleep and you start mentioning certain things that are beyond their paradigm, they will actually argue with you and tell you you're wrong, even though you may have done hundreds, if not thousands of hours of research, and you can tell them everything about this, they will not believe you because the government or the system or the controllers told them otherwise. And so they will support the corrupt control mechanism against you because you're just you and you have no standing within against the government or something, an official body of nothing fundamentally. So this is Stockholm syndrome. And cognitive dissonance is the fact that and of course, these are just my understandings as I've broken them down for myself so I can understand what they mean. You know, Google them, do the technical work, of course, but this is just my understandings. And cognitive dissonance is we build our persona, the face, our external portrait of who we are to the realm, to the world, on certain knowings that have been given to us. Okay. And when somebody comes along and challenges one of those certain knowings that you've built your persona against, your personality, it anchors you to the ground, even though it's probably untrue. You fight that because you get that whoosh of emotion, that whoosh of anger. And what this is your subconscious is lazy. Your subconscious doesn't want to have to change its thought processes. The conscious mind can be very, very active and very, very questioning. But it gets to a certain point when the conscious mind and the subconscious mind clash. And that clash, that emotional oof, is cognitive dissonance. And that's part of also the Stockholm syndrome. So they're very, very closely linked to my mind, to my mind. And so what we get is that rush of anger. Dare they? Who do they think they are? All this kind of thing. But this can sometimes happen to ourselves where we can get frustrated and angry with ourselves. And this is all part of the inner work that we go through from this great big onion. Okay. And this onion will have hundreds of thousands of layers potentially. Or maybe not. But we have layers of the onion, which is our mind. Now, we also have something called the Russian doll. And the Russian doll is multiple dolls of the same sort that just fit over each other to create a full doll, the full Russian doll. But to get to the full Russian doll, you have to start, from the small little solid one that's in there. Solid. And all the rest just build up and make the whole. So, here we go. The onion, as we start peeling away the falsehoods via our research and understanding and new understandings of the realm, what we live in, what we live on, what we potentially are, and what we're potentially not. We start peeling these onion layers away. But what we also do at the same time is we start building the Russian doll. So every layer you peel off, you're connecting to your true self, your head brain, your heart brain, and your gut brain, the Trinity, which is fundamentally your sovereign power. The connection to source and your enlightenment, the love and the light of yourself via forgiveness, going through a process of understanding why you're feeling this way and pushing through that uncomfortable feeling. And it is uncomfortable. We often hear people about, talking about the dark night of the soul. And they say it as if they only had one. Well, I've had more than one dark night of the soul, I can assure you. I've had multiple dark nights of the soul because I've got to a stage where I think I've got to the end of something, and then I realize there's something more, and there's something more, and there's something more. I have to recalibrate myself to go into the next stage of this research process, this enlightenment, this spiritual journey that I'm on, that we're all on fundamentally. And it can be a bit like, oh God, really? But when you take the step through that and you break that next layer of the onion down, what you actually do is you put another layer on the Russian doll. You could look at the Russian doll of your true fragmented self. And every time you peel a layer of the onion off, one of the true fragments of the Russian doll gets placed in place. And the more times we take the onion of control and peel it away from ourselves, the more fragments of ourselves get placed back onto the doll. And at some point, we get to a stage where the doll is almost complete. Now, whether that doll ever gets fully completed or not, I don't know. But the initial journey of unpeeling the onion from the mind, stripping away these preconceived ideas, this preconception is very difficult. And it takes practice and mindfulness. But as we continue to do this process, it gets easier and easier and easier. Now, there are certain people out there that I have found personally very, very helpful. Um, One of them, and I'm hoping to be talking to this person in the very near future, is a guy called Joel. And it's called Joel the Perceiver on YouTube. Now, when I was going through some of my earlier stages of really pulling this onion apart, probably about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the research I'd done had led me to a place where I had to challenge my preconceptions of me. It's all very well saying, oh, the earth is flat, the earth is round, there's no space, there is space. Whatever kind of truth you're looking at, there's a firmament, the sun is local, the moon is local, whatever it is, that kind of thing, or this is a false flag, that's a false flag. It's very easy to do all these things and sit back, but to then start looking at yourself, to change you and the perception of you and how you are, and change that background kind of perception of you, and to start walking truly into your own power, that's a very difficult thing to do. It's the next stage on from truths, fundamentally. People say, oh yeah, I'm awake, oh yeah, 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 I know it all. But when it really comes to it, that is just part of the journey. Because the other part of the journey that goes hand in hand with this is the removing of the layers of the onion and the self work to become the best version of yourself almost. Now, I've never particularly resonated with that, because I think we're always the best version of ourselves at that particular time. But if you can continue a journey, and remember, no journey is linear. There's always ups and downs, ups and downs. We may have periods where we really do struggle mentally with this kind of thing. I have, but I've also moved on through that because I've been able to use that, that almost the mental side of this, the struggle is is the subconscious fighting you, the laziness and the comfort, the subconscious wants to walk around in the comfiest pair of PJs you've got, or the comfiest dress or dressing gown you've got, and not really do too much, you know. And so when you force that subconscious, to start having to go outside and face and deal with stuff, can be very tricky. It's not an easy journey. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But as we go through this journey, the fragments of ourselves return via the Russian doll. And we step into our pure sovereign power, and we're able to hold something called space. Now, I never really understood what holding space really meant, but what it is for me, the way I see it as holding space, this is my interpretation, is being able to be in my own power, in my own sovereign power, not asking for permission from anybody else to be there. I'm there within my own innate ability, and I can hold a place of centralization. I can just be, and I can observe. So one of my favorite sayings is ob observe but do not absorb. And this is fundamentally holding space, not getting drawn in emotionally, observing what's going on, having the confidence within yourself, the discernment of yourself, which all this work brings out, and being true to yourself. Forgiveness in love is one of the key parts of this as well, and should never be forgotten. Because when you love yourself, and I don't mean that in a when you love yourself or respect yourself, and you can forgive yourself of things that you did, because it's the other thing is it's blaming other people for things that have happened to you. It's their fault, it's their fault. Well, it takes two to tango. And there would have been something you did, actions you didn't take at the time, or reactions you had or didn't have that would have caused the situation. And so to look at yourself and understand this and forgive yourself and take this as a learning opportunity and try and be mindful the next time this happens to act or react in a slightly different way is the growth of and peeling the onion back, which then adds another layer to the Russian doll. Another fragment of you comes back to the whole. And at a certain point, you start to attract your own Russian doll bits that you weren't even looking for, didn't even realize were out there. As things just naturally fall apart, as in the brain control, the onion falls apart and the Russian doll starts to build itself. And at that point, your connection to source, your higher self, your trinity of your heart, brain and gut, the synchronization of this goes into a place where you become truly at peace. Truly at peace. And that is holding your space. That is holding that center line. The ability to observe but not absorb, and to observe and not react. Now, obviously, this is a very, very difficult one, and it's constantly ongoing, constantly mindful of it, particularly with loved ones, close loved ones, children, husbands, wives, parents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nieces, nephews. The interpersonal stuff can be very, very tricky. But this is also about placing boundaries. Because when you place a boundary on something that you're not prepared to go beyond, it empowers you. Well, um, when I was driving my taxi, um, I would sometimes talk to some of the customers, as you can imagine. And one of the conversations I had once was regarding boundaries. and the fact that no was actually a sentence. And no doesn't need qualifying, and no doesn't need justification, because no is no. And it's you setting a boundary that doesn't need any kind of explanation, justification, or any kind of anything. Just as yes is a sentence, so is no. And this person took this and used this to great effect because they set their own personal boundaries from that point onwards. Now, when you have an open head like I do via human design, it's very tricky sometimes to be mindful of this because an open head means that I absorb and can pick up the wants of other people. And sometimes I can be led easily into agreeing to something that I should not have agreed upon because the energy of them I absorb into my open head, and that energy I then see it and feel it, but that energy didn't come from me, it came from somebody else. So so this is another layer of the onion, human design. And then we have the astrology that affects all of this, another layer of the onion. But when you start to understand what's going on, understand why you react and act in certain ways, it then gives you the power to be more mindful about yourself and keep that center line to be able to hold that space and be sovereign. So, the onion and the Russian doll, as we peel the layers away, we go through some very uncomfortable and challenging periods. But what we don't always see is the positivity of the Russian doll being made. And at a certain point, there's a tipping point when the Russian doll becomes more prominent than the programming from the onion. And when you hit that tipping point, nothing can stop you. You are truly a sovereign being within your own power. And that's when the fun really starts. I hope that was helpful. I'm talking about inner work, self work, tricky subjects. Now, as I said earlier, I probably should have finished off. I should hopefully be having a conversation with Joel the Perceiver in the near future, and this kind of stuff is what I would, kind of going to be talking to him about really, because as I should have really carried on going backwards, forwards, dyslexic brain, going on a tangent. 4 years ago, Joel was doing single videos of certain things, and I would flick onto his videos and I'd be watching that, and what he was describing in words, the ability to articulate the sensations and feelings I was going through really helped me. Really helped me because it was a natural process for me, almost an unguided process. I trusted in my higher self. I was guided by myself, okay, in an organic way. But to be able to switch a video on and listen to somebody expressing what you were going through or what you were seeing coming up, and it was a bit of a, oh my God, to be able to get through that process was really, really powerful. So check out Joel's channel, The Perceiver. I'll put a link down below in the description box for this, or if I'm very, very clever, it might be up here in the in the cards, as they call it. I don't know if that works or not, but there we go. So yeah, so this is kind of a part two to what I spoke about um, the other day, yesterday, and it's about taking our power back in this key point in time. and stepping forward, releasing the shackles of the mind and the wrists, and stepping forward into the golden era, the brave new world. But the transition will be always made that but it more easily by doing the inner work and being conscious of your actions and reactions to certain stimuli and to certain people. I hope that was helpful. Love, light, and blessings, everybody. And I shall catch up with you very soon. Bye bye.